Yeah?
It's not so much a moment, but a long moment of time before we're live on all platforms. We're live on some platforms now, and then it takes a minute for Instagram and Facebook to catch up because they like to do things differently. Let's see. Well, we're on everything except for Instagram, so I would say go ahead and get started.
Okay.
And I'll troubleshoot this.
Here we go.
There's some type of problem happening.
So back to the story here. We're going to start on page, on Os Gimel. So we had spoken about this idea that the 15th of Av is the rebound from the fall of Av. The full moon comes out, represents the return of the darkness. Since Av is the lowest month, therefore the 15th of the month of Av, the 15th of every month is the revelation and the rebound, the bringing back of whatever fall might have happened in a month. But in the month of Av, it's more pronounced because the fall is so great. So we said this is the Indian of the 15th of Av. What is the rebound from? Primarily, without getting through all the details, it's from the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, all the inyanim that happened on Tisha B'Av. And therefore, on that day shines the light of the third Beis HaMikdash. It shines the light of Geula, because the rebound of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash is the building of the final Beis HaMikdash. It's really, in the day itself, which we're quickly approaching, is a very messianic day. It's a day which basically, even as the Mishnah says, the heavens open up and there's there's a palpable reality of Mashiach on that day. Amongst the other things that the Rabbi Rashab brings in his mimer is this notion that on that day, Vayom Hahu Yihiyeh, on that day it will be as Yud-Kei Yud-Kei. We learned twice in two different classes now. Yud-Kei Yud-Kei means that even the Vav-Kei will become a Yud-Kei. And we learned here that there's two outcomes when the lower realms of the Vav-Kei become a Yud-Kei. One is that because the light will be stronger in the lower worlds, it will be impervious to klippas. And two is that it will be nitzchi, it will be eternal, right? There won't be an ability to be destroyed. Not only klippas sort of can't get their hands on it, but that it'll be a permanent state of not getting their hands on it, because the concept of nitzchius, what we called it basically, right? That how do we phrase it? Yeah, the concept of a hefsek will disappear. What's a hefsek? So we said Abba and Ima, which is Yud and K, they're in a state where they never separate from each other. The revelation from the Yud is constantly flowing into the K, and there's never a moment of disconnect. So in the Vav K scenario, there is moments of disconnect. Like we said, not always are we, so to speak, visited with holy times in this world or holy moments. The world can experience separateness. And once in a while on Shabbos, or once in a while, i.e. when the first and second Beis HaMikdash were in the world, that was a nice long chunk of time, about 800 and some years all put together. But nonetheless, it could be separated. But the idea that the lower worlds, the Vav and the K, will turn into a Yud K means that separation will no longer be possible, and therefore it will be a permanent state of godliness in the world. As we started to continue in yesterday's class, we got really caught up on two lines. It took us an hour, Baruch Hashem, which is nice sometimes. Which I won't do that today. And we started to explain the connection with the Parsha, next week's Parsha, V'eschanan, with our whole conversation over here about Yud K and its relationship to Tu B'Av. What's the inyan of the Eschanan that we spoke about? What's remarkable about the word Eschanan? Thank you. Gematria 515. And what do we say? There's a 500 and there's a 15. The 15 we know is the inyan of the Yud K, right, which we've been discussing. But the 500, who can tell me briefly what is the concept of 500 and what does that have to do in Kabbalistically? Yes, Noam?
It's the 5 Hasidim, I guess, times Keter, which is 100.
Exactly. Simple as that. We said yesterday, I'm not going to go into it bichlal again. See there for our notes. But we said that there's something called the 5 Chasadim, which are basically these aspects of amplifying divinity in exponential manner. And in the Kesser, in general, we talk about the fact that the Kesser goes on the number 100, because the Kesser is the totality of all the Spheros, which is 10 times 10. So inside of this realm of Kesser, which is 100, you have this notion of the 5, of combining that with the 5 Chasadim, and this gets you to the number 500. We said in Kesser itself, there's 2 levels of Kesser, which is the level of Arich and Atik, and we said really there's 5 Chasadim in each one of them, and we're talking about therefore there's each one of those things is its own set of 500. I didn't see this in the Maimer, I don't think, maybe in the very end, but one could maybe say, what's the difference between the effect of the 5 Chasadim in Arich, or like the number 500 in Arich, as opposed to that which is in Atik? So it's a little bit of a detailed question. We might have to go a little bit further into the Maimer to understand it. But actually, let's do that. Before we get into that, let's teach the next segment, and I'll come back to that question. But in principle, what we're saying is that you have this word ve'eschanan, and it's 515. It has something to do with a combination of these 5 chasadim in Kesser, let's say in Atik, and the number 15, which is Yud Kei. So far, that was our brief review. Let's go inside and start today's class.
Okay.
So, please take it. I don't have the same pagination, but we're going to take it from this. Let me take a look at this for a second. Yeah, write the last 4 words on the page. Ve'inyan taf kuf tes vav. You see that? On page kuf ayin zayin. So it says this notion of 515. Hu shahei chasadim da'arich v'da'atik me'irim b'yud kei. What we're seeing in this 515 is basically a relationship between the 500 and the 15, which means that the level of 500, which is the Kesser in all of its glory, is shining into the Yud Kei. So 515 is the Kesser going into Chochmah and Bina, right? What did we say Yud Kei was? So all of a sudden, we spoke before about the Vav Kei becoming a Yud Kei. Now we're discussing what's going on above the Yud Kei. There's this level of Kesser, which is we're now denoting as 500, and 515 represents a flow of the Kesser into the Yud Kei. V'zeu gam 15 amal klaim l'kasef. And that's also what it means. There's 15 amas for the shoulders of the curtains. What is that talking about? Does anyone have any idea? The Mishkan. Oh, exactly, the Mishkan, right? So let me explain. In the Mishkan, besides the actual Mishkan where the tent of meeting, as you know, that we learned a little bit about it in our other class, there was a courtyard, and there was curtains around it, which created a space of a courtyard where the altar was. And in the front, when you would approach that courtyard, there was essentially 2 different, right and left curtains that on each side they made a door in between them. And the idea is that the length of each curtain from the right to the southern edge and from the left to the northern edge, there were 15 amos each. For example, if you're walking into the courtyard, like from here, you guys with me? Let's say there's a door right here. And so what we're talking about right now is from here to here was 15 amos, and from here, this side of the door to here, was 15 amos. And that's called the shoulder. So these are called the klayim, these curtains that were here were called the klayim, and the klayim, the katef, this is like the shoulder, it's called the shoulder of the Mishkan. Okay, where are we going with this? So it says the 15 amos, obviously the number 15 is going to come in, but it says Chamesh Esrei Amma is the Yud Kei, and what is the kasef, what is the shoulder? Wouldn't you know, is the gematria 500. So this whole idea of Ve'eschanan and 515, we find this appearing again in the Mishkan, that there is 15 amos, and the name and the gematria of the thing that it was 15 amos of, the shoulder, is the gematria 500. And this is the same concept that we just said a second ago, that the Mishkan was sort of symbolically drawing down the level of the kasef, which is 500, into the Yud Kei, and was doing it twice actually, right, on both shoulders. So it was a physical manifestation of this concept of drawing the Kesser into the Yud Kei. The 500, which is the Kesser in all of its glory, into the 15. You with me? It's cool. V'zeu gam inyan base pamim yud k. And here we have again 2 times yud k, right? There's yud k on the right side, there's yud k on the left side, 15, 15. So we're seeing here that the Mishkan itself, which kind of makes sense because we're saying that yud k was this messianic reality of the third base of Mikdash. So in the Mishkan already, there was already like a walking symbolism. Literally, when you walked in the door, you had yud k on your right and yud k on your left, 15, 15. And this is, again, this notion of making the Vav K into a Yud K. It appeared already in the Mishkan. Ki b'chatzar Mishkan hayu shnei ksafim. There was 2 shoulders, 2 sides. V'kol echad mehem 15 klaim. In each one of them, there was 15 amos in the curtain. Ushnei pamim 15 hu beis pamim Yud K. And this 15, 15 is Yud K, Yud K. Now, what's the connection to this 15 amos in this shoulder of the Mishkan, which is really another way of saying hamshachas of atik into Yud K, drawing the keser, and not only the keser, but the higher part of the keser into the Abba and Ima, into the Yud and the Hey. Im beis pamim Yud K, shezun hem kamo Abba ve'Ima. What's the connection with this curtain situation? 2 times Yud K, that the Zun, the Za and Nukva will transform into a scenario of Abba and Ima. Because from the standpoint of the Yishtal, in other words, how things work normally and naturally according to the natural flow. Zun hem lamatma Abba and Ima. Zun, Za and Nukva, they're below Abba and Ima, right? In other words, by definition, as you go lower and lower, the light gets more and more diminished. You go like dimensionally down and down. Is there another one of these or not really? Yeah, there's an extra one here. Omer, can you give that to Yoshua? Here, behind you there. Maybe take a chair if you like. Whatever you like. Anyway, so the whole idea is that according to the Seder Shtalshalus, you can't have a Yud K situation. It's a flow, right? In order to create a scenario where suddenly there's like the light in the lower worlds compares and is shining as brightly as the light in the higher worlds, bichdei shezun yeh kamo Abba and Ima, hu al yedei hamshachas hakeser shelamayla min shtalshalus. That's only available and able to be achieved if you draw something from the keser, which is above the ishtalshalus. In other words, the keser doesn't have to play by your rules. If you start into the realm of chokhmah and below, then there's a certain natural progress. But if you go into the keser is by definition beyond the Seder Ishtalshlus. Therefore, it has qualities that are infinite qualities. It doesn't have to play by the rules of the Seder Ishtalshlus. And that's the only way to get the light of the Yud K to be found in the place of the Vav K is only if you go and tap into something which is above the Seder Ishtalshlus. And this is the whole concept of why you have this 515, and then again 515, right? You have 2 levels of Yud K on those corners, and the gematria of the corner is 500, because how did you get to a situation of 15, 15? How did you get to a scenario where you have Yud K and another Yud K? It should be a Yud K Vav K. It's because you have this level of 500, which is fueling this thing, the 500 being the Keser, which enables the light, which is in the higher world, to go into lower worlds as is without diminishing itself. Ubekeser atzmo atik. Yeah.
You're saying the natural way is to have Yud K and Vav K, and then to get Yud K and Yud K, this duplication.
Yes.
You have to go above the Seder Shtalus.
Hishtalshlus means a chain, a shalsheles. And like a chain, these are what we call the worlds, because one world is chained to the next world, chained to the next world, chained to the next world. It's like a chain of worlds. So by the time you're in the bottom world, you lose something, basically. Your many states of disconnect from your higher. Like think about just like, for example, in yourself, to go to intellect to emotion, to go to emotion to thought, speech, action. By the time it comes out, it's many stages away. And to think that you're going to have, let's say in your speech or in your action, the same level of divine awareness of what's going on inside of your brain, it doesn't even make sense, right? How can my hand think, right? it's not even an instrument for that. The kelim are not built to hold those dimensions of awareness, right? So that to get the Yud K to go into above K, it would be like us experiencing the divinity of Atzilus in this world, which would be akin to your hand, saying a mimer. It's not shaykh, right? It's a level of awareness and divine revelation which does not fit into that vessel. But if you're going to go up into the Kesser, and the Kesser doesn't care about your vessels and your lights and all these limitations of that are in the world, because it's above the world. So if you tap into what's above the world, then it can make things happen in the world which are not according to the normal order. And therefore, there's a visual of this. This is a kind of an amazing thing that we're learning here, is that the Mishkan itself was a symbol of divine light, which doesn't really belong in this world. The very Mishkan is the presence of the world of Atzilus in this world. And you're going to walk in, and the first thing that greets you when you come to the door is, how'd you do this? He said, no problem. You see this Yud K on your right and your left? Well, the gematria of the Kasef is 500, and we got to Yud K because we have a 500, we have the Kesser powering this whole situation. Right? The Mishkan is amazing. Every little detail about it is describing to you the ability for having godliness in this world like this. Yeah.
The Yud K and Yud K are 15 each.
Yeah.
You said that gets you to 500?
No, my point was, how do you get to a situation where you have 15, 15? Because each one was 15 amos. Yeah. You should have what? You should have 15 and 11, right? Yud K, Vav K. 15, 15 does not work in this world. In other words, there's no 15, 15. There's no Yud K. There's Yud K, Vav K. So here you're in the Mishkan. It's a divine revelation of Atzilus in the lower world. Doesn't make sense. It's 15, 15. It's Yud K. And then you're going to say, how? So we say kasef, right? Which is a strange word, by the way, for the shoulder of the Mishkan. Who calls it? It's because it's the gematria of 500. And it's because you tapped into the Kesser that you are able to bring Yud K even into the area of the Vav K.
Could you just add 15, like two things that are 15 amos in this world? Why is that? You're saying it's symbolic.
I'm saying it's symbolic of why 15. Let be 16. There's a lot of numbers out there. The whole nature that it was 15 is because it was telling you something about the nature of of God. Yud K, right?
Is that what Chassidus would go into the Yud K in the first place also? Because Chassidus like beyond the Shalom is like that.
Right.
Temimei shall be the blood of Chacham either.
Well, yeah, just an array of it, I guess, right? I mean, Chacham and Bin are made out of some shine from the Kesser, right?
So 500 is Kesser.
So 500, we spoke a long time about how we arrived at this number 500 and its association with Kesser. But yes, in short, 500 is Kesser at this point. Okay, fine. I feel like everybody's on board. So, and in Kesser itself, we're saying this is not only the 500 Chasadim of Arich, but also of Atik, which is even the highest levels. And that's what is required in order to make lights go into vessels that are too small to hold them in this world. Now, what's the difference between these two explanations in the Maimer? The first one, maybe just right after class we're going to eat? If that's okay. The first one, in other words, that we spoke about, refers to the elevation of Zun. So we said Yud K, how's that going to happen? Because Vav K is going to have an Aliyah. That's how we just basically, we're talking about two explanations. One is the original thing that the Rabbi Rashav said, just talking about how Yud K will double itself. And in that portion of the Maimer, he was referring to how Vav K elevates into a Yud K scenario. And the second explanation, which was this business about Ve'es Chanan and the Mishkan, right? Because we're following the Rebbe Rashab over here. There, he's not talking about the elevation of the Vav K. He's talking about the Hamshacha, the drawing forth of the Kesser. Because if you notice, in the first one, there was no mention of Kesser. It was just Yud K, because the Vav K itself sort of comes up and changes itself. The second explanation, he sort of explains how. right? Because now he brings in this notion of the kasef, the number 500, that there's really, in order for the elevation from below to above to happen, there must be first a drawing down from above to below, right? Which is the shorish and the siba of the aliyah of zun. How did you make your vav k into a yud k? I'll bring my second explanation about this business of the 5 chasadim and the keser. Umamshich ba'amaimer. And he goes on to explain the Tu B'Av Shayach Gam Labir Sheni to Shnei Pamim Yud Kei. That Tu B'Av, 15th of Av, is also connected to the second explanation. In other words, the Hamshach of Keser is also connected to Tu B'Av and creating a Yud Kei because of this drawing forth of the Keser. Why? Ki B'Tu B'Av Hu Gilu Ehei Chasarim Da'atik B'Av V'Ima. Because, and again, this day is coming, we have to kind of realize what's about to hit us, and it really is, by the way. If you live as a Jew, and you live in the Jewish calendar, and you do feel what it means to have 6 days and then a Shabbos. It's not just things you read in the book. When we're approaching like Rosh Hashanah, already from now, if you're tapped in a little bit, you feel it. Oh, Rosh Hashanah is mama's around the corner, and it starts to like change your life. And when Rosh Hashanah happens, and the aftermath of Rosh Hashanah, like the Jewish calendar has a serious like reality to it. The more you practice Judaism, the more you live in this world, you realize that these are powers that are moving you. Tu B'Av is a crazy major breakthrough of life, if you realize what it is. And what he's saying now, when he concludes, is that on Tu B'Av, there is a revelation of the 5 chasadim of Atik into Abba and Ima. That's like Kabbalistically what's going on that day. That's why there's suddenly a boom, a big full moon in the sky, and not just any full moon, but the full moon of Av, which is basically telling you that in the lowest of lowest places, you can bring down the Atik of Keser and create a Yud K right here in this world. Look up in the sky. It's the 15th day of the month, right? And you've created this revelation from the lowest places. They're going to elevate to becoming a godly place because of the awesome Hamshacha that's coming down. When Keser goes into Abba and Ima, because this 515 business is basically telling you that the Keser is coming into Abba and Ima. It doesn't stop there. Because it comes into Abba and Ima, it comes all the way down to Malchus and elevates the lowest world. Now, even though it happens every 15th of the month of Av, this will happen in a permanent fixture way in the future. That's going to be the emblem of the Messianic age, is that the 5 chasadim of Atik will be shining into Abba and Ima and making their way all the way down to this world. And that will be like the fixture of Geula. So we have like a little tiny day of it once a year, which is why it says in the Mishnah there was no greater days for the Jewish people than the 15th of Av, and then Yom Kippur, because it's higher even than Yom Kippur. It's powerful stuff. By the way, Chamisha Asar Ba'av, the very famously points out very often, is the same gematria as Kasiv V'Chasima Tova, which means you should be written and sealed for a good year. It's the same exact gematria. So that's like really when everything begins to draw down the light of a brand new year. So even though this is officially the light of Geula, a little piece of it shines every Tu B'Av. And on Tu B'Av is Me'ein Hagilu D'La'asi. Straight, we should just put that on the wall to meditate until such time. On Tu B'Av is a revelation of the Messianic future. On that day it shines. Okay, going on to Oz Dalet. You with me? Excited for Tu B'Av? It's okay, just a bug. Yeah. All right, Dalet. What's the reason that Tu B'Av has this amazing light? Hu lefisha Tu B'Av hu shleimas halavana shla'achra yurid Tisha B'Av kanal. We already said. Now, even though many things happen on that day, like we mentioned in the first class, the people stopped dying in the desert and they started intermarrying into the different tribes and etc. But what did the Arizal say? That the main reality of that day, all those other things that happened on that day, including the victory over Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah, which is destined to happen as well on that day, in completion, all these things are only outcomes, says the Rabbi, of the real Indian of that day, which is the full moon. That's really that's what happens on that day. Everything else is just small stuff that is a result of this amazing reality of this full moon, which is again, every month has a full moon, but not like this one because it's the rebound from the lowness of Av. Tzrich lahavim, we have to understand. The Iker Kaimas Siyar Bashlemusa, the main notion of the full moon, B'chamish Asar B'chodesh, on the 15th of the month, Hu Rak Nogei L'Giloi Shalah. It's only really a celebration of revelation. We've discussed many times the difference between etzem and giloi. Maybe not enough times. But what's the difference between etzem and giloi? The thing itself versus something that comes off and shines from the thing. And usually, and also here, when we talk about something that shines off, it's like no big deal, basically, compared to the thing itself. It's just something that, it is what it is. And if you want to see it also, I can show you what it is. So you might get excited that you're seeing what it is. But the reality is it's just the small stuff that it's letting you in on its secret. It's just a revelation of the actual reality of the things. So we call this the etzem and the giloi. And what the Rebbe is saying here is, what are we really celebrating when it comes to the 15th of any month? Giloi. Why? Truth be told, the moon is full all the time, right? There's always a full moon. Right? In other words, the whole moon is there at every point of your life, which means the etzem is not in discussion right now. We're only getting excited about the light that shines off this etzem. Right? And what's so great about the 15th months is that the wholeness of the moon, which is always there, it can suddenly be seen. It's revealed its wholeness. The and since everything in Torah is so exact, therefore, let's return to our conversation. We're all excited about the 15th day of the month of Av and its godly revelation, messianic, etc. Really, what we're so excited about is the inyan of Giloi, revelation, not the thing itself. The whole celebration here is that there's someone's letting you in and showing you the thing itself. But we're not celebrating the thing itself, the etzem. This whole holiday is a celebration of giluim, revelations. Just like, because we said the whole Iker celebration is the moon, and what are we celebrating? Not the moon itself, but the fact that you can see the whole moon. So too, the Tu B'Av itself, its real greatness is a celebration of revelation. But we have to understand. Didn't we just get through saying this is a revelation of the Messianic third temple? Because in addition to the first and the second temple, right? In other words, the revelation of the third temple, whatever it is infinitely greater and incomparably greater than the first and the second temples. And this is understood according to what we said earlier, that the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi kashur im inyan beis pamim yudke shezun yekamo av ve'ima v'sha'ab be'ima yeh gilui atik. And we already explained what the greatness of the third Beis HaMikdash was. That in the third Beis HaMikdash is going to be a revelation of Yud-Kei. Zun is going to turn into Abba and Ima. And Abba and Ima itself is going to get a revelation from the Atik, from the 5 Chasadim of Keser. The Afal Pikeim, Mekashnu Amayla, the Chamish Asar Ba'av, Im Zeh Shebachamish Asar, Hu Shlemus Halavana, Shlemus Inyan Agiloi. So in other words, it seems like we should be celebrating something more than mere revelation. Since it seems like we have something new besides mere revelation. Because what did we have before? What kind of godliness did we have before? A godliness of the sort of the first and second temple. Now, while that was exciting and wonderful and we long for the good old days, it turns out that the revelation of the third temple is not just seemingly an increase in revelation. It's a whole new thing which was never experienced before in the world. The etzem itself seemingly is something new. It's like a new animal. So then why is it, right? It's incomparably greater than the first and second temples. So why is it that at the end of the day, all this pomp and circumstances, all we're celebrating is more revelation? We seemingly have something itself new. That's the question he asked. You with me so far? You guys have the next page is the question.
But I think it's so exciting, Revelation. I don't know why you keep putting it down. It seems like this great thing, a revelation. I'm there for it. I'm on board.
Revelation is great. Revelation is great. No, it's true, but in compared to the essence. Let me put it like this. Let me tell you, for example, the difference in Revelation, right? We talk about the idea of like a person's name reveals themselves to a certain degree, right? Like God, your name was given to you by Ruach HaKodesh from your parents. You're not just, for example, it's very important to point out that the difference between a name in Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew, versus the names in other languages. You've probably seen this in Tanya. The other languages, the name is sort of just an agreed upon, let's call this a tree, but it has anything to do with the tree, right? It's just a societal agreement. We're going to refer to this thing as this. But the Alter Rebbe explains that the world is created in the Hebrew letters. And therefore, an eitz is not just what we decide to call it, it's what it is, right? And therefore, the name is so intrinsically connected with this thing, and it reveals this thing. And if you start studying eitz, and what's the ayin, and what's the tzaddik, and how they come together in their gematrias, you're going to learn more and more and more infinitely, because it goes down forever. You can switch letters around, you can change them, and you can have like, mamish, literally a day's worth of revelation about the eitz. At the end of the day, I don't see any tree in here. Right? We're just talking about the eitz. We can talk for 100 years about the revelation of this thing, but you haven't even gotten to the thing yet. It's very far from the thing. It's just naming. It's just trying to reveal and shine to you. So it's true. Revelation's great. It's exciting. But in terms of having that versus having the tree itself, it's not even on the it's not even in the same ballpark, right? It's a mere revelation. So for sure we are excited about revelation, because we don't want to be in the dark. We want to experience godliness, etc., etc. But when we're experiencing revelation, you should know that there's a Bruce Springsteen song, "Blinded by the Light." The light, right? The light that you see and you're all excited about it actually blinds you from the thing itself. You get caught up in the light, thinking that that's the thing, because it's like, that's enough for me. I have all this revelation. Meanwhile, all you have is a name, a piece of paper. I'll give it to you. Here's a tree. Ayin tzaddik, and you walk out. You're not going to walk out with any goods in your hand. So that's the idea. For sure, revelations are most powerful, and we down below long for these revelations. But it's the cheap stuff when it comes to the actual goods. You follow what I'm saying? And so therefore, but you're right. If there's no revelation, even if we have the essence and it's not revealed to us, you know what that looks like is dark and scary even, because God, in His true self, the real tree, we can't get close to it, right? It's too scary. So we ask for revelations to sort of dim it down and just show me a little bit. Like when, for example, when Hashem came to them on Har Sinai Himself, they came later and begged Moshe, please don't do that again. Can we just hear this from you in the meantime? Literally, it's in the Torah. It's too much to experience the essence sometimes. But nonetheless, we're talking about the Messianic third temple. And therefore, we're talking about the big finale of this thing. We want you at the end. Sometime we get you, right? And here, the whole conversation is surrounded by this full moon, which is just, the moon's full all year. It's just a celebration of revelation. I mean, at a time like this, who's talking revelation, right? That's the idea. You had a question?
So the is like the source code, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Don't say it too loud. We got our AI guys over here. They're going to mess with us. Okay. So, going on to the next paragraph, please. It says, Gam tzrich lahavnu, you also have to understand the cave and in the Chamisha Ba'av who al Darech in the Chamesha Amal Klayim Lakasev, since we just explained that the 15th of Av is associated with the 15 Amos for the shoulder of the Mishkan, very related, right? It's basically like a physical manifestation of this whole concept. Shayu b'chatzar Mishkan, that was in the Mishkan courtyard. Shayod lifnei in the Chamesha Ba'av, which, by the way, when did the Mishkan stand? It was before the whole conversation of the 15th of Av in our collective history even began. In other words, the Mishkan preceded the holiday of Tu B'Av on every level. It even preceded the first thing that's mentioned in the Gemara that happened on the 15th of Av, which was what? them stopping to die in the desert, which happened only after 40 years, right? And we had the Mishkan a long time before that, 40 years. Yom Shekalu B'Meisei Midbar, the day that they died in the desert. V'Yiser Mizo, not only did the Mishkan come before the 15th of Av, which was the day they stopped dying, Yiser Mizo, Gam Lifnei Shiluach HaMaraglim Shebishvil Zeh Nigzar in Yidamasi Meisei Midbar. It even came before Moshe sent the spies, which is the whole reason why eventually the 15th of Av would be a holiday to counteract that tragedy. In other words, so they built the Mishkan even before Moshe sent the spies. They had the Mishkan, right, when they were poised to go into the land. Which means that before they sent the spies, which was the first Tisha B'Av, we already had the Mishkan. Now what are we saying here? This notion of the 1515 and the 500 that's powering it and the whole ability to have this revelation of the Vavke becomes Yudke, it was sitting in the Mishkan all along. And we're trying to associate this with Tu B'Av, when reality is we already had this thing in the Mishkan before not only Tu B'Av, but before even Tisha B'Av, even the first Tisha B'Av, which was the whole cause which was going to eventually bring us to this greatness of the 15th of Av. And the question is, what's the big deal about the 15th of Av? There's never a day like this. We never saw anything like this. What are you talking about? We walked in and out of this every day before it was even like a concept that there would be such a thing as Chamisha Asar B'Av. Are you guys following this? No. Yeah? The idea is that all the divine revelation which we just described so eloquently about what's going to be in the Messianic era with Yud K, and 500 and the whole 9 yards, which we're saying is a Tu B'Av thing. There was no greater day in the world than Tu B'Av. That whole concept preceded Tu B'Av. It was already there. So what do we need Tu B'Av for? We already had the Yud K, and the 500 in the Mishkan before there was even a Tisha B'Av, which eventually led to a Tu B'Av. That's the question. We're sort of like, something is out of order here. That's the question. You following? Okay. So now get to Shmuel's point from yesterday. I told you we'd circle back around to you. You're looking it up. Here, check it out. V'hine inyan zeh Shayom Tov the Tu B'Av Kashur im Inyan HaGilui. So this that we've just kind of established, that the whole holiday is associated not with the essence, but with the revelation. Muvan Gam Mizeh. Right, and by the way, going back to what we just said, right? If the essence was already there in the Mishkan, then he started walking us into this. The Tu B'Av is not the celebration of that thing, because we already had that thing. We had the Mishkan, right? In other words, the idea of Yud K, and 500, the Eschana, that whole thing, we really already had it before. We're saying that that's a Tu B'Av situation, and now we're tracing it back and saying we already had that in the Mishkan. So that if Tu B'Av is the celebration of that, you can see once again, it's a celebration of something we already had. It's a celebration of the revelation of that. It's not the celebration of that thing, because we already had that thing. But it's a celebration of the revelation of that thing. And he says, furthermore, we can see how Tu B'Av is associated with mere celebration of revelation. And this is what you brought out yesterday or 2 days ago. That Muvan Gam Mizeh Ma'atamim al Kaviyas Hayom Tov the Chamisha Asar B'Av. One of the reasons, and the first reason, why 15th of Av is called a holiday in the Mishnah, Lefishu Yom Shekalu Bo Meisei Midbar. It's the day that they stopped dying in the desert. To Tochen Yom Shekalu Bo Meisei Midbar. What is the whole idea of the day they stopped dying in the desert? It's as you pointed out yesterday. They didn't stop dying in the desert on that day, did they? What's the day they stopped dying in the desert? Tisha B'Av. Sha'az nizbar v'nizgala. It just became clear and revealed. Izgala milsa lemafreya, as the Gemara itself uses the language. It became revealed retroactively. Shetisha B'Av hu yom shekalu b'meisei midbar. That actually the 9th of Av was the day that this miracle happened. So again, what is the Tu B'Av? It's not a holiday of anything itself. It's a holiday of a revelation of a thing that was already there. Nonetheless, the 15th of Av was the day that was fixed the day that was revealed and clarified that they stopped dying. Ki yom tozeh kashur im inyan hagilui. And once again, why? Because this whole holiday is about revelation. We now see it. It's about the full moon. The moon was already full before you saw it. Revelation. It's about the idea of Yud-K, and the 500, but that was already in the Mishkan. But nonetheless, we're celebrating its revelation on 15th of Av. And also here, we're the first thing that we're celebrating was the end of the dying in the desert, but it already happened. And we're celebrating on the 15th of Av, is just bringing that to revelation that it already happened. So we see, like from all corners, this is a holiday which is not celebrating the thing, it's celebrating the revelation of the thing. Good. Going on, Os Ches. Yuvan ze behektim, we can first understand by prefacing the Kamosh HaGazer de Meisei Midbar Chalsa B'Tisha B'Av, just like the dying in the desert, the decree of dying in the desert, finished on Tisha B'Av, right? That's when they stopped dying. Ela shelo yadu baror ad shenisma lehalavana b'yom hatu. But they didn't really know it clearly until the moon became full on the 15th. You remember the story, right? They stopped dying on the 9th, but they didn't believe that it was really the end of their sorrows. So they said, maybe we miscalculated the moon. Maybe it's really the 8th, or the 7th, or the 6th. So they went and buried themselves again on the next day. And the next day, you're hearing me? Until they got to the 15th of the month, the moon was full, and they said to themselves, there's no way we made a mistake, ad kedei kach, such a gross mistake. For sure the 9th has passed. And so the whole idea is that they're celebrating on the 15th the end of the dying on the 9th. You follow? You sure?
Why did they bury themselves?
Right, so we mentioned it before, but basically they were decreed to die on Tisha B'Av because that's the day the spies came back with a bad report. They cried, all the Jewish people. We just read it 2 days ago in the Chumash, and therefore it was decreed upon that generation they're not going to go into the Midbar. But also, the execution of that decree was also on Tisha B'Av. So they realized the next year, a whole quadrant of them died on Tisha B'Av. It was like a mass, crazy death situation on Tisha B'Av. And then they said this is going to happen every year. You've been decreed that this generation will be knocked off on Tisha B'Av. So every year they know who was going to die. They all buried them. They all dug open graves for themselves the night of Tisha B'Av, slept in them, and whoever got up, got up.
So when they turned 60?
What's that?
But I think it was when he turned 59 to 60. That's when they died.
Then they would know.
Okay, interesting. Then they would know. But I mean, I don't know if everyone lived till mamish 60, or they couldn't live past 60, but whatever it was, I believe that they all buried themselves. Because they didn't really know. That's what I understand.
20, then it was 40 years. So 20 to 60, and then 4 years later, everybody that was 20 didn't die.
I get you, but I think what I understood is they all buried themselves for whatever reason. I don't know if they knew that for a certainty, that like who was going to die and when.
The entire male population buried themselves on Tisha B'Av?
That's what I understood. That's what I understood. I don't know. I have to look into that a little bit further, but it says asu kivrehem. They dug their graves. So anyway, the point is that this was only known, right, that the decree was over when the moon became full. Al derech zeh hu ba'gazer de chorban beis hamikdash va'galus. So now he says the same is true when it comes to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and the whole galus. Shebitul gezera zo hu b'tisha b'av. That really, the end of this decree, which was put upon us, that the temple should be destroyed, and that there's going to be galus in the world. When does it all end? When's the day that this finally is over and we can celebrate or maybe we won't celebrate it yet, but the decree has come to an end, just like the original decree. It actually ends on Tisha B'Av. In other words, the great end of our sorrows is on Tisha B'Av. The Tisha B'Av nolad Mashiach, and we actually have evidence of this in our understanding of our holidays. Tisha B'Av, it says Mashiach is born. Right? There's a great tradition amongst the Jewish people that Mashiach is born. And actually, if you want to look at a pretty wild footnote 35, take a look at the bottom. You have it, right? You see it? Yeah, so go a little bit after that. It says, Eicha Rabbi, etc. It says, Beregesh la'achri ha'chorban. At the moment after the chorban, Kishagasa paraso pam shnia. There was basically like a cow that, what does a cow do when it makes noise? What does it do? Moves? Yeah, but it was some kind of a moo. And the first time it mooed, basically the temple was destroyed. And it said the second time, when it moves again, Nolad Moshiach Shel Yisrael. Then it will be the birth of the Redeemer of Israel. In other words, that the same day of the destruction, one moo later, the destruction happened, and the Mashiach is born, right? I don't think it was. Yeah, why is it is a cow? Why a cow? No, because it was just like a happenstance that I forget the exact lashon and what's the story even what's going on, but there was I think it was even like a non-Jewish person in their cow or a Jewish person in their cow, and like they said, like that with the first moo, it came down, and the second one, the Mashiach is born. I have to look up the exact midrash. I meant to do it before class actually, but it's not. It's just it was like something that was taking place in the country at that time, and so they used the tools that they had basically. There's some kind of a prophetic voice that he heard or something. I'll look it up. In any case, I wanted to continue with this. So he says in the Pri Eitz Chaim, over there, continue to go. It says which is the Arizal, whose Yortzeit is tonight. It says there, Befurash B'Tisha B'Av Nolad Mashiach. It says openly that Mashiach will be born on Tisha B'Av. V'lechein omrim birchas halavan b'motzei Tisha B'Av. That's why we have a special. We don't say blessing on the moon in the regular time that we do we wait till after Tisha B'Av. And part of when the fast ends, we actually run out and bless the moon. It's a part of the Seder of the Yom of Tisha B'Av. And why? Levaser, because the blessing of the moon is essentially an announcement, because one of the things that we say in the Nusach of the blessing of the moon, Shem asidim lischadesh kamosa, that we will be renewed like this moon is renewed. And it's a declaration of Mashiach. So we wait on the Motzi Tisha B'Av, we go out and we declare Mashiach's arrival because Mashiach was born on Tisha B'Av. B'shara Kavadas, look at it says over here. In the end, it says the Tam she'omrim nachem b'minchas Tisha B'Av. Why do we say nachem? What is nachem? You should know. It's a prayer of comfort that we say in the Siddur one day a year. It's the add-in in the Tisha B'Av davening, which is a prayer of comfort that Mashiach's going to come. We don't say it in the morning. We don't say it mincha, because that's sort of like when the day turns from sort of sadness to this messianic realization. By the way, Tisha B'Av is called a holiday in the Torah. We don't say Tachnun on Tisha B'Av, but it's like a kind of strange holiday. We're mourning. What are we holidaying? It's the destruction, because Mashiach is born on that day, and to sort of sear that into the collective consciousness of our people, we actually make a special prayer in the Shemona Esrei of Mincha of Tisha B'Av, comforting ourselves for the whole Galus. And what does it say there? It's called Nachem, comforting of Yerushalayim. And it says over there in the Arizal, Ki b'mincha of Tisha B'Av nolad Mashiach hanikra Menachem. Because on Mincha of Tisha B'Av, Mashiach is born, whose name is Menachem. And because Mashiach's name is Menachem, this is from the Arizal, it's also from the Gemara Bichlal. But because Mashiach's name is Menachem, therefore we say this prayer, Nachem. On a side note, but it's very interesting, if you count back 9 months to the day from the Rebbe's birthday, it's Tisha B'Av. It's very interesting. But put that in your pipe and smoke it later. Okay, so anyway, the point being is that we find that just like when they died in the desert, the end of the decree really was not Tu B'Av, it was really Tisha B'Av. So too, the end of the decree B'chlal of all the things that happened on Tisha B'Av, including the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and Gullus, it ends on Tisha B'Av. And that's why we celebrate Mashiach's coming on Tisha B'Av. Just let me finish this paragraph. Umotzei Tisha B'Av makadjin levana, and right away after Tisha B'Av we go ahead and run out and sanctify the moon, because the Indian of Kiddush Levana is that we will be asidin lischadesh kamosa. We too will be renewed like the moon is. And the shagilois Indian zebes shleimus is just what? So we're already running out talking about the moon, but we don't have the full revelation of the moon until Tu B'Av, which is when the full revelation happens. So the idea is that the etzem, the real thing, which is the ultimate revelation of Mashiach, it already happens on Tisha B'Av. But on Tu B'Av, therefore, we're not celebrating the Geula itself. We're celebrating the revelation of the Geula. And that's the whole point. So now we have yet another concept to put into this idea that Tu B'Av is a celebration of the revelation. That even Tisha B'Av itself, that is actually the essence of the end of the decree. Right? But we celebrate it when the revelation is in full, which is in Tu B'Av. Okay, we'll pick it up from tomorrow, Sunday.